Well, hi, everybody. It's Kim Winter from Logistics Executive Group again. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined fairly early in my day, but later in the day with a very special guest, one of New Zealand's finest, a national treasure from New Zealand, would be my way of putting it, and one of our icons in the literary world and the social world in New Zealand. This gentleman is a very highly regarded author. He's a member of the British Empire. He is recognised as one of New Zealand's great literary commentators, social commentators, has been the author of New Zealand's most famous book and film, Once Were Warriors, which is a huge statement on New Zealand's social scene back in the 80s and 90s. I think it was produced in 1994. And more recently collaborated with one of the great sportsmen of the world, Sonny Bill Williams, an Islander, Kiwi, Polynesian Kiwi, and based in Australia these days, has transcended sport from rugby league and rugby union, and has been a leader of people, his own people, of sporting people, made amazing transitions in his personal and religious life. Sonny Bill Williams, an icon of the sporting world. Without further ado, it is my really humble pleasure to introduce Mr. Alan Duff, MBE. Hey, Alan.
Hi, hi everybody.
Good to see you, and thanks for joining us today from down under. Alan, we always like our guests to give us a bit of a heads up on their upbringing. I can see from your profile you're brought up in Rotorua, the heartland of Maoridom and New Zealand. Please tell us about your upbringing and how you got into the sphere of literature.
I come from a literary academic family on my father's side, a white Kiwi and a wonderful man to whom I dedicated every single one of my books. Unfortunately, he married an extremely volatile Maori, being my mother, and she had a tendency to go and wreck our house and attack my father physically, and it really traumatized all of us children, and we got into trouble growing up. I consider myself so lucky that I was blessed with the literary genes on the Duff side of things. So once I was able to face up to myself and grow up, everything started to happen, including my literary career. But I'm just thankful for the genes.
Sure. Now, Alan, Once Were Warriors was iconic. I know it had a massive impact on me and all the generations through the 80s, 90s, and still remains an absolutely monumental piece of work. Talk to us a little bit about what was going on in your mind when you came up with the book and the very successful movie, Once Were Warriors.
Well, at the time, I was a complete unknown and living in a very small rural town in Central Hawke's Bay. My wife was running a hospital for people with head injuries, and I had the dream that I was going to write a novel. I really wanted to say something about, and it was, everything was in the title, being Once Were Warriors, because at the time I wrote it, we were a society that was still reeling from getting all of our meaning from being warriors to it becoming an unlawful thing, because we used to go and kill the enemy, and that's where we got all our status and our standing from. And then the British culture was thankfully introduced, as far as I'm personally concerned, and brought all of that to an end. And I think that until maybe 20 years ago, we have been struggling. We've still got our struggles, but we're emerging out of it. There is a sector that isn't. I suppose in summary, I wrote about domestic violence, a culture of heavy drinking and of non-reading, and a highly dysfunctional family setting. But not all of the family were dysfunctional, but the father was a drunken, violent man who didn't know any better. And I'm going to explore that in a series where what made him what he is. And in fact, I have an opening quote in the pilot that I've been writing, and it's from Carl Jung, and it says, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Wow. And I think that sums it all up for me, my whole attitude to life, having had a hard life myself, that despite what happened to me, that's not what I am. I chose to become a writer. I chose to become a person of integrity and honor and all of the other things. And then out of Once Were Warriors, because I had a scene with the other main character, the wife of Jake. She was walking through her house, realizing that her house was bookless, and so were the homes of everybody else that she knew. And well, from that idea, I visited a school in 1993 in a tough part of Hawke's Bay, and thought, well, I'm going to come back with some books for these children. And then so that's when we started the program called Books and Homes. It's now called Duffy Books and Homes, a little bit of a play on my name, which was I didn't want my name there. But the Prime Minister 2 years ago handed out our 13 millionth book, and now we've passed the 14 million book mark, giving books to poor children, most of those children Maori and Pacific Islander kids and refugee kids.
Yep.
We get a lot of refugees in New Zealand from the Middle East, and so they'll be the happy recipients of books from our organisation. Mm. And also I've done it in partnership and could not have done it without their involvement with a logistics company, our biggest and best logistics company and best listed company by country mile, Mainfreight.
Yes.
Who today just ordered 1,500 copies of Sonny Bill's book. So
wow,
we've had that, I've had a close friendship with the founder of Mainfreight for the last 27 years. So it's That's just incredible. Been a wonderful journey.
It's great to see corporate being involved, and I know there's a very tight personal relationship there, Alan, but it's great to see one of New Zealand's iconic companies, certainly the most famous New Zealand company, and globally highly performed, being Mainfreight, and well done to them for the alignment. The context, of course, Alan, for our upbringing, and you're a baby boomer like myself, brought up in a similar era, being that you're of Pākehā and Maori descent. I'm Pākehā more so, but we brought up in a very interesting time where prior to that, the generations before the war, there was the typical lingering colonial past from New Zealand, where the British came to New Zealand back in the 1700s, took on the Māori, very strong tribal warrior nation, and didn't succeed in subjugating the Maori. And of course, we have the Treaty of Waitangi, which meant that there had to be an agreement of terms, but the British never subjugated the Maori. And I think thinking back then, Once Were Warriors, the Maori were certainly some of the strongest Maori culture nations around the world, certainly remain so in terms of culture.
Yes.
Let's move to the mention you made of Sonny Bill Williams, the book that You Can't Stop the Sun Shining, another iconic book, and obviously going to number one with 1,500 copies being ordered by Mainfreight today. That's sensational news, and congratulations. Tell us a little bit about the book with Sonny Bill Williams, because for those folks who understand South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand culture, or rugby culture, he's an icon of a man also.
Well, yeah, and I don't think it's arguable that he's the greatest sportsman that New Zealand has ever produced, because he excelled at the highest possible level in four different sports from rugby league. So he won championships twice in Australia with that, and then he played for the national rugby league side. Then he played rugby in France and moved back to New Zealand and said, "I'm going to play for the All Blacks." And he went on to become a great All Black. And while he was at it, he thought, well, I may as well do some boxing. He had a few debts and became the New Zealand heavyweight champion. And then he thought, I like this game of rugby sevens. And so he got into the Olympic squad. And so he went to the Olympics. So all in all, a fantastic sporting achievement. I think everybody agrees, anyone who knows him, that his greatest achievements really are the fact that he has become a better person. And he goes on about that. That's the theme of his life, wanting to be a better person. And I think in the context of where you are, it was Islam that made him. He credits Islam with making him a better person. And it's what he always wanted to be. I just want to be a better person. He needed spiritual guidance. He needed a spiritual presence in his life, and Islam is what gave it to him. And that in itself has been most enlightening for me, learning, the basic tenets of Islam and why they do things. I was like a lot of people. I started off with my prejudices all born out of 9/11 and the different terrorist acts, but that is not representative of people of the Islamic faith, not Correct. For one moment.
Absolutely.
And he just taught me the deepest respect for them and for that matter for Christianity and for any other religion. Even though I'm not a religious person, I still believe in principles, having moral principles in life and always doing the right thing. So it's been a fantastic exercise. My biggest difficulty was trying to get him to not be so extremely modest.
Yes.
At one stage, quite early in the piece, he said, after about a week, he said, are you pleased with how it's going? And I said, no, I'm not actually, Sonny. I said, you've just told me that in a particular rugby test, you played all right. And I've just YouTubed something and that highlights of that game. And you were man of the match and you turned the whole game. You won the game with your offloads and your general play. And he said, oh, well, I've never thought to be boastful. And I said, well, we need you to at least give us some honest facts. So he really opened up. And we just had a magnificent journey together, and we're now brothers. We're brothers. We love each other. So
I think Sonny Bill's journey through his earlier days of indiscretion and finding his way as a Polynesian youth, and having lots of accolades because of his natural genius abilities on the sporting field, but not so much controlling them off. But then growing into that man, adopting Islam as his guiding light, and sharing that word as certainly I've had the great fortune of briefly meeting him. The man has a genuine aura. Anybody who's ever had any contact with him, and that's hundreds of thousands of people, feel that aura, that benefit. He's the most selfless person you could ever imagine meeting, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And what he's doing in terms of social, especially in the world of Polynesia, for Polynesian youth, as a guiding light, as an example, as a man who is setting a pathway forward for young people, men and women, boys and girls, is incredible. And it is a story worthy of global note. Sure, it's based in the Pacific, but he's played all over the world and influenced people through the All Blacks, through the Olympics, and what have you. And it is an incredible alignment between your capabilities and your knowledge and your experience to guide him through that process and collaborate with that book. So I haven't read it yet. I'm really looking forward to getting a signed copy. So I'll have to work on with that.
We'll get that to you. We'll get that to you, no problem.
Absolutely. But Alan, look, your work also, you and I share the kindred spirit of working in the humanitarian sector and education, freedom from poverty through education through Oasis Africa, which I've shared with you, and our exploits in East Africa. Remarkably aligned, my friend, in the types of endeavours that we've undertaken. Something about those days being brought up in New Zealand, who knows? But I think it's incredible what you have achieved. I know that you're working on some projects we can't talk about at the moment to bring even more light to the world of diversity, of domestic violence, of culture clash and collaboration. I think you genuinely are one of our most iconic people, and I stand in honour in front of you, my friend, because you absolutely have made a massive social change and political change in New Zealand. Alan, for the youngsters, we always like our guests to give us a word or two. If people are looking to follow your path and get into expressing themselves and overcoming the challenges that they have and getting into literature and getting into writing and expressing themselves that way or through film, what one or two tidbits of knowledge would you pass on?
I think the number one I would pass on is don't be a copycat. Don't be derivative. Don't look to see what others are doing. Of course, we all need to, with a mind to copying it, but with a mind to being inspired. But be inspired by your own ideas. Don't try and make versions of other people's work. Be original, respect originality, and never be threatened by talent greater than yourself.
Wow. Yeah. Very sage words from a very wise man. And Alan Duff, author, playwright, filmmaker, social change maker. It's been an absolute pleasure and honour to speak with you, Alan. We've spoken before and previously at the top of the show, but hearing the words coming from your heart, incredible. And I hope our audience can take value from what you've had to say. The word that comes into my mind when I'm talking to you and I'm sitting here thinking about what you've done is mana. You carry extremely powerful mana. And if you want to explain to our audience what the word mana means, we'll look to go out on that.
Well, mana means your standing. It also means your inner being, which means that you've got to be at peace with all of your environment, as in your family and those close to you. And it's mana means your dignity, and mana has got a certain ferocity about being prepared to die for its dignity rather than bow down. So, thank you for the compliment. It's fantastic.
Alan, very powerful words, and I do encourage people to read your latest book with Sonny Bill Williams, Can't Stop the Sun from Shining. An iconic piece. People look down here and they can see where to register to go and get a copy of the book and to share the thoughts of power and peace and leadership. Alan, I will look forward to keeping in touch and good luck with more sales on the book.
Thank you very much, Kim. Take care.
Thanks, Alan.